First of all, this has nothing to do with giving. Something happened yesterday, and we need to pay attention to it. And I don't want to get political with you. I know I do politics in other settings, but not in this one. But I think we're at risk. And so what I'd like to do is just offer a brief prayer with you first. In God's grace, may we think clearly, love freely, live in harmony with nature, and at peace with each other. And the blessings of that peace be yours to love and to grow and to plan for the future with confidence. Amen. I'm going to do one thing here. I'm going to move this out of the way because I can't see you folks over there. So, back in a little bit. Okay? You good? All right. Okay. Scooch in here. All right. Thank you. Good morning. How many of you were in this building the last time I was here? Okay. I owe you a small apology, maybe a large one. I get very comfortable with you because I've been here a long time, and this is kind of my home away from home. In talking about cancer, I gave a quote from something, and I dropped the F-bomb on you, and I shouldn't have been that comfortable. So I wanted to apologize for that before I got started, and I will not do that again. Quick cancer update. I've been told by my physicians that this gives you an idea of how odd it gets when you're dealing with cancer. I was told that I have prostate cancer, and my oncologist told me that I had reached below castration levels. That I should receive that as good news is an indication of how different things can get. But we are doing very well with this at this point. My cancer is almost undetectable. Prostate cancer eats testosterone, and so part of my medication program is to reduce my testosterone to zero. So you're looking at a guy with no testosterone here. I get hot flashes now. No, I'm not kidding. The general effect is essentially menopausal. So anyway, I've always understood when my daughter and my wife complained about hot flashes and all that, but there's a difference between empathy and direct experience. So we want to talk today about what does it mean to give. Little distinction first between casual and sacrificial gifts. You've seen bumper stickers that say, random acts of kindness. What you do here, random acts of kindness are very good. I'm not knocking that. But organized acts of kindness are better. And what happens in communities like yours is organized acts of kindness, which are more powerful and more sustained. Sacrificial giving is when you're called upon to do something and you know it's going to hurt. And it may hurt for a long time. And you do it anyway. When it hurts, you have to remind yourself of why you gave in the first place. I had an experience a bunch of years ago of a family whose kids I taught at school. They're evangelical. They were very upset that I was not. I was invited over to dinner at their house, beautiful spot on the ocean with an indoor pool, with a big glass wall looking out over the ocean. I mean, really nice. And I just thought I was being invited to dinner, but it turned out that their pastor was also there, and that this was essentially an intervention designed to save my soul. And I felt rather like Daniel in the lion's den. And I had written something in a column in the paper some weeks before that had the husband particularly irritated. Because he said, look, we give to charity, okay? We give to charity. And I don't know why you're trying to make everybody feel bad. And I think I had used the example from Scripture of Jesus and the young man who comes to him and says, how do I become a disciple? And Jesus says, that's simple. Sell all you have, give to the poor, and follow me. And it says the young man went away sorrowing because he had many possessions. This fellow got angry about that, and he said, we've talked about this in Bible study. Jesus' remark, sell all you have and give to the poor, is not a universal recommendation. It was for the young man specifically. In other words, it was an out. It doesn't apply to him, it belonged to the young man Jesus was talking to. And apparently they had talked about this in Bible study, and that confused me because I said, now, if you're in Bible study, you may know this better than I do. But if I recall that passage, the young man went away sorrowing because he had many possessions. Then Jesus turned to the people who were still there, and he said, it is easier to pass a camel through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. The boy had already left, so it can't be that it was for his instruction because he wasn't there. If we take that as an out, that every time Jesus said anything to anybody, that was only to the person to whom he was speaking, that the guidance is binding, then we're off scot-free here, aren't we? Because none of us were there. Well, then he just kind of lost his temper a bit, and he said, so how much are we supposed to give? And I said, look, one, you invited me, and I've not come into your house to make you feel bad. But it seems to me that we should give until we feel the pinch. Whether we're giving in time, whether we're giving in cash, whether we're giving in effort. It needs to be, I think it needs to be sacrificial a bit. We need to at least feel the pinch. So we know we're really doing something. The Reverend John Winthrop, just up the road from us in 1630, he was speaking to the Pilgrims, a tiny congregation. It's a famous sermon because it's referred to as the city on the hill. His general idea, and it's a long, long sermon, I would imagine it would have taken well over an hour, maybe 90 minutes to deliver, in very uncomfortable pews. So it's a form of penance just to be there. The part that gets remembered best is his idea that America can have a special relationship with God. We can become the new Israel, he said, a city unto a hill, by having a special relationship with God. This became a foundation politically for what's referred to as American exceptionalism. Except it forgets one very important thing. What Winthrop is offering his people is the chance to build a new society based on love. Nobody has tried that. And if we can do this here, he said, we can become something special. And he talks about giving. If the time and occasion be ordinary, he is to give out of his abundance. Let him lay aside as God hath blessed him. If the time and occasion be extraordinary, then a man cannot likely do too much, especially if he may leave himself and his family under probable means of comfortable subsistence. We must share out of our superfluities for the sake of others' necessities. We must share out of our superfluities for the sake of others' necessities. That's the heart of the sermon. And then what he says next is one of my favorite lines in any sermon anyone has ever preached. To love and live beloved, he said, is the soul's paradise on earth and in heaven. To love and live beloved is the soul's paradise on earth and in heaven. We must delight in each other, make each other's conditions our own. Rejoice together, mourn together, labor and suffer together, always having before our eyes our commission and community in the work, as members of the same body. Love maketh the work perfect. Love maketh the work perfect. Now, I've been a teacher for 45 years now. When my school, Cape Cod, I used to teach at Cape Cod Academy for 34 years, and we began to have kids coming in from mainland China. And it was an interesting cultural shift to watch what was happening here. those kids had never been exposed to the idea of charity. The message from the government is, we've got everything under control. It's perfect here. America might need charity, but we've got this all organized, not here. And so it was an odd thing for them to come into a community where charity was an important part of the package. And we had a number of really gifted performers. And one named Mia played the traditional Chinese zither harp beautifully well, professionally well. And she performed in a benefit coffee house. We would do 3 of those a year. And on a good night, we could raise over $1,000 a pop. She performed in one, got a standing ovation. I never had her in my classroom, but the next fall, she found me right the first, second day of school. And she caught me in the hallway, and she said, "Mr. Brown, there is something going on here." She went like this. "There's something going on here that has something to do with the heart. And this year, I would like to find out what that is. There's something going on here that has something to do with the heart. And this year, I would like to find out what that is." So where is the impulse coming from? The impulse to give. Certainly love. But we have to be careful what kind of love we're talking about, because this love can't be based on desire. Because you know perfectly well that many people are really annoying. I mean, you know, it's not going to be based on attraction. You may find them distinctly unattractive to you. So it's not that kind of love. It's not based on attraction. It's based on policy. It's based on a decision you make when you wake up in the morning that you are going to greet everyone with a gentle benevolence. That's policy, because it's not always easy to do. It's a discipline of spirit to greet each person we meet with benevolence and gentleness, whether we like them or not, whether they're attractive to us or not. It's a core here. Compassion, empathy, feeling for other people. And you had this little thing about gratitude in the beginning, the little song you did. Don't underestimate gratitude as one of the major impulses for living charitably in the world. That part of looking at your life and saying, what do I have to be grateful for? I'm not worrying about cancer. I'm alive. I'm living with you. So what am I here to do? What are we here to do? Asking the question, why do I have a soul, is missing the whole point. You are a soul. Every one of you is an embodied soul. Souls in bodysuits. So the real question isn't why do we have a soul. The question is, why do we have a body? Why have we been given this body of ours? It has to be to act in the world in some way. Spirit must need substance to do something, to some kind of work that's being done here. Or else it would be a reasonable question. If we are souls already, why bother with all this stuff? We age, change, die, and rot eventually. What's the point? And I think the point is that giving, that living lovingly, is the appropriate expression for being put in a body. We're here to love this place, as difficult as that is. That's our challenge in the flesh this time around, to learn how to love this place and to love everything and everyone in it, even when they're annoying and scary. Because we're on the verge as a nation of becoming ungovernable. We're very, very close to a tipping point, and history tells us when we tip over the edge, getting it back can take generations to do. We've been given something wonderful. And we go back to that ancient sermon in 1630. To love and live beloved is the soul's paradise on earth and in heaven. We have to really try to love the people with whom we disagree the most. It's a discipline. And it's become very, very difficult because half the country is scaring the other half of the country to death. And if we don't step back from the edge while we have time, we have to step back from the edge. Interestingly, recently in the news, there's stories about various states putting the Ten Commandments in classrooms and public places. I rather like the Navajo, who have 2 commandments, just 2. Commandment 1, don't go around hurting people. Commandment 2, try to understand things. That's all. Don't go around hurting people. Try to understand things. But you'll notice neither the 10 Commandments nor the 2 Commandments talk about giving. But all the Scriptures do. All the Scriptures do. The project is to keep our hearts tuned to the frequencies of other people's suffering. That's our moral challenge. And even if we're comfortable in our own lives, to keep your heart tuned to the frequency of other people's suffering. And this is something I used to teach my kids. If you don't look, you won't see. If you don't see, you won't feel. If you don't feel, you won't act. And if you don't act, nothing will change. If you don't look, actively look, tuned to the frequency of other people's suffering. If you don't look, you won't feel. And if you don't feel, you won't act. And if you don't act, nothing will change. So that being tuned to the suffering of other people, to be sensitive to the tear sliding down the side of the face turned away from you. I think that's the heart of it. I think that's the heart of it. You have a right to the work, says God to humanity in Hindu scripture, in the Bhagavad Gita. You have a right to the work, says God, but the results belong to me. You have a right to the work, but the results belong to me. You do what you do every day because it seems to be right to you. So you try. You give it your best shot. And then having given it your best shot, you give the results up to God. Because you may not live to see the results of what you do. Teachers find this all the time. They run into some kid years and years later, and the kid says, Mr. B, you really saved my life. And I'm racking my brains, and I'm thinking, when did I ever do that for this kid? In one case, I was told, I kept hearing over and over again, you saved my child's life. And I finally asked the father who kept telling me this, I don't remember doing that. He said he came into your school, being bullied, having a bad experience where he'd been. He got the idea, he'd heard around that your room was a safe place, so he brought his book and he sat down against the wall and he started to read. It was lunchtime. He said, you came in, you saw him there, so you came and walked over and sat down next to him and asked him what he was reading. And I said, yeah. He said, well, he really needed that. You have no way of knowing that even small acts of kindness, just noticing somebody, seeing somebody, we can't fix everybody's problems. But at least if you can stop somebody, if you think you see something, say something. And what the something to say is, are you okay? Just that somebody noticed that you've got this burden. Are you okay? Can I help? And they may say, no, I'm cool, I'm fine. You've already done something. You've told them they're not alone and that other people care about what they feel like and what they're going through, that they're not alone with it. Hindu scripture again. The Lord lives in the heart of every creature, says the Bhagavad Gita. Now, connect this with the sermon that I mentioned earlier. We must delight in each other, making each other's conditions our own. Rejoice together, mourn together, labor and suffer together, always having before our eyes our commission and community in the work as members of the same body. So there's a Christian, and here's a Hindu. The Lord lives in the heart of every creature. He who burns with the bliss and suffers the sorrow of every creature within their own heart, making each bliss and each sorrow their own. Those I hold highest of all. Who suffers the sorrow of every creature within their own heart, making each bliss and each sorrow their own. Without that kind of compassion, religions are just dusty bags of propositions about God. It's not until the love has legs that faith is real. Otherwise, they're just propositions. And my favorite Hindu proverb of all that is not given is lost. All that is not given is lost. It's something we remember every minute of every day. If there's a chance to do something for somebody, that chance will come and go very quickly. All that is not given is lost. We did a lot of benefit concerts, as I mentioned earlier, and when you come to a 7th grade kid and say, I hear you can sing, would you be willing to be part of the next coffee house? Try to remember when you were 12. Remember when you were 12 and uncertain about everything. And then some guy wants to get you up on a stage under bright lights and have you do something. And every nerve in your body is saying, no, leave me alone. At which point, the reminder, it's not a gift until you give it. It doesn't mean anything to say you're a gifted person until the gift is given. It's not a gift until you give it. And the whole point of education is to turn ourselves into a gift for the world. I would tell my kids, and the last class I taught full-time graduated this year. It was a kind of a turning point for me. This is the last group of kids that I lived with, that I really got to know really well. One of them asked at one point, how old are you, Mr. B? I said, oh, I'm old. And one of the other kids said, no, you're not. And then another kid chimed in, and we're not going to let you. We're going to rub off on you. And that's exactly what happens. We're going to rub off on you. And then your part back to them is, the point of education is not to bust your ass to get into a good college, and then bust your ass to get into a good grad school, and then do it again to get a good job, and then bust your ass your whole life long, and then you finally die of a busted ass. That can't be the point. The point, and you have to tell your kids this, is to turn yourself into a gift to the world. And education is the process by which you discover what those gifts of yours are and how to perfect them, and to begin practicing giving them until you can do that effectively. To find out what your gifts are, to perfect them, and learn how to give them effectively. My personal goal as an old guy at this point is that when it's my time to die, my personal bag of gifts will be empty, having just given the last one away. That's our goal here. Little story, and I'm done. I want you to close your eyes for a minute. I want you to imagine two people snuggling together in the afterglow. Lovers. And one says, I think I've died and gone to heaven. And the other says, well, if we're in heaven, what does that make you? An angel, I guess? And whose angel are you? She blushes and lowers her eyes for a second. She says, your angel. And he says, well, I'm your angel too. And there's a silence while they sit with that together. And then this thought, if we could remember to treat each other as angels do, we get to stay together in paradise. If we can remember to treat each other as angels do, we get to stay together in paradise. But if we forget to treat each other as angels do, we will be cast down to earth and have to live as earthlings do. And you know what that is. We know what that is. All too soon you will forget your true nature, what you really are, where you were, and what it was like, and how to find your way back there. So we can never forget to treat each other as angels do. And if we do that, make love your central purpose, it will be your greatest joy. Make love your central purpose, and it will be your greatest joy. That's my promise to you as an old man. My doctors told me that I will live long enough to die of something else. For which I am more grateful than you can possibly imagine. Namaste. I love you.
You have been watching the message from our Sunday celebration service here at Unity on Cape Cod, providing a positive path for spiritual living. Please join us every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. at 147 Walton Ave, Hyannis, Mass., and visit us online at unityoncapecod.org. This video was made possible in part through a grant from Unity Worldwide Ministries and the Templeton Foundation.